You know, I saw this case, but it hasn't really been talked about much in YouTube. Tried to look for YouTube videos talking about this case. I only found one person talking about it. It's Dan.
One of the things that I talk about often on this channel is the omnipresent danger that men face from women, all women. The danger of having a false allegation made against them. The fact is, sadly, millions of false allegations are made by women against men every single year.
Every single
As I've
day.
covered many times before, rarely, if ever, are the women held accountable for it. But sometimes they are, and today I want to talk about one such case and how, while it's fair to say her victim got some justice, to say it was equal, well, so recently a British woman in Hong Kong by the name of Isabel Rose was sentenced to 6 years in prison after making false allegations against a British banker. She claimed that she had met the banker in Thailand and afterward he invited her to join him in Hong Kong. Long story short, Rose then claimed that the banker had raped her over the course of 12 hours in his apartment. The man was subsequently arrested and an investigation was commenced, as it should be. During which, though, it came out that Rose had asked for £5,000 from the banker after the assault. It was also found out she'd made a demand for $100,000 while threatening to report him to the police.
Mm.
The investigation...
See, that's the thing nowadays, right? Because laws are so leaning towards women. Women are actually able to use this as extortion methods against men.
found that the forensic evidence indicating that Rose had been raped was inconclusive at best. The case also focused on several WhatsApp exchanges after the alleged assault, where it was discovered that Ms. Rose had deleted several messages and also used disappearing messages as well. Ultimately, the case went to trial, and the court found that Ms. Rose was guilty of blackmail and perverting the course of justice, and as a result, subsequently sentenced her to 6 years in prison.
Do you guys think 6 years was fair? Do you think that was enough? What would the man have gotten if he was fully convicted of that heinous crime? Well, he would have gotten 6 years? Because if he wouldn't have, then she deserves more.
And that's the point that I want to discuss, because it speaks to what almost always happens in these cases, where investigations are done and, yes, occasionally charges are filed against the women who make false allegations as a result. But the charges don't reflect the actual crime committed. No, they reflect something else. In this case, blackmail and perverting the course of justice. In the U.S., on the very rare occasions charges are filed against women who make false allegations, and it is indeed rare that women are charged, the charges are often for things like filing a false police report, which is generally a misdemeanor in many jurisdictions. And it speaks to the injustice and double standards that exist where the men accused face significantly more penalties than the women who make the false allegations against them. Now look, in this particular case, we can't say for sure whether Ms. Rose was actually raped or not, but the court is saying she wasn't.
I mean, it's hard to say because afterwards of the extortion methods that she tried to handle the guy, does it really seem like she was the victim?
She claims she was, and to this day she's sticking to that story. But that's not the purpose of my video. The purpose is to talk about how an investigation was done, and as we discussed, the court found her guilty on 2 counts of blackmail and perverting the course of justice for fabricating a rape allegation against a man while at the same time demanding money from him. The judge even went so far as to say her conduct was, and I quote, wicked and evil, and that Ms. Rose had shown absolutely no remorse whatsoever during her sentencing. Which brings me to the point that we do need to discuss, the question that nobody seems to be asking. If this man had been convicted based on her allegations, how many years would he have spent in prison?
That's the first thing I asked, Dan. As soon as you said 6 years, I was like, that seems so fucking little compared to what he would have gotten.
The answer is up to life, because
Yep.
that is the maximum penalty under Hong Kong law for rape. Not to mention the loss of his reputation, his career, his family, his friends,
He was a banker, right? He might not even be a banker anymore.
his future. The fact is, contrary to what feminists and women claim, a false allegation has a very serious detrimental lifelong effect on the men accused. Because unlike a prison sentence, a false rape accusation, as hundreds of men I've interviewed over the years who have been falsely accused have told me, follows you for the rest of your life. You never truly escape it, and you never will. It weighs on you every single day. People still judge you, still assume your guilt, even when it's been proven beyond any doubt that the woman lied, even when she admits she lied. And let's reiterate an important point that I made earlier, how Ms. Rose, even after being convicted, has shown a complete lack of remorse. Let that sink in for a moment. According to the court, this wasn't someone who admitted what she'd done and apologized. No, this was someone who, even after her conviction, has shown no remorse for what the court concluded she had put another human being through. And that's an important lesson that men need to take to heart, because Ms. Rose is not the exception, but the rule.
They don't care. They don't care. Right? They don't care about you, your well-being, justice, or anything. They only care about themselves.
Rarely, if ever, do women who make false allegations ever show even the slightest bit of remorse. Rarely, if ever, do they even admit that they lied. And if they do, it's often years or even decades later, such as was the case with Crystal Magnum of Duke Lacrosse fame. That should terrify every man watching this, not because every woman would do something like this, but because far too many, far more than anyone wants to admit, actually do. And here's another lesson that this case illustrates, which is that you can never truly know if a woman can be trusted, never truly know if she's capable of making a false allegation. And I hate to break it to you, gentlemen, but most of
He's not wrong, right? This is why I always say, like, you never know. As much as you think you know people, right? It's very hard to actually know people, because they don't show them true selves until that particular scenario shows up. When that scenario shows up, they're going to be themselves. And you never know when that actually shows up.
them, the overwhelming majority of them, aren't made by strangers, but by women you know, women you've been in relationships with, women who've claimed to love you. The absolute fact is, most false allegations actually come from women you know, friends, co-workers, girlfriends, and wives. Literally, millions of allegations are made against men in family court every year by women who've claimed to love and care about them before. Same goes in the domestic violence courts. Women are seeking to get an upper hand, usually in a divorce. The silver bullet is real, and women wield it like the sword of Damocles if they think it will give them a leg up in custody and child support. In the workplace, allegations are rampant as well, where men lose their jobs, lose their careers, merely for doing things as innocuous as saying good morning, sometimes even when they don't. And let's not even get started on the claims made by women on social media every single day of men saying or doing things that are accepted as gospel truth with not a shred of evidence to support it. None of those allegations, even when proven to be outright lies, will ever show up in the statistics. They're never counted as actual false allegations, even though that's exactly what they are. Nor, for that matter, are most of the ones that are found in criminal cases. The truth is, as dozens of police officers and investigators, both male and female, that I've personally interviewed have told me, it is rare they are even allowed to charge a woman who they know and have proof has made a false allegation, lest the department or DA's office face backlash from feminists and women for holding those women accountable. Which is why, instead of charging the women, even as I said, when they have overwhelming evidence she made it all up, the cases get conveniently locked away. And as I mentioned earlier, on the rare occasions they are actually charged, it's almost always for lesser things like misdemeanor filing of a false police report, which often doesn't even carry any jail time. That is the reality of what is going on, and it's something every man needs to be aware of.
It's
Sadly,
true.
most men don't want to actually accept that reality, and I understand it. Every man thinks she'd never do that to me, until one day she
She
does,
does.
or someone else does, and then your life is forever altered, forever ruined. Literally every man I've ever spoken to about this who was cleared of a false allegation has said to me he never thought a woman, especially a woman he knew and loved, was capable of doing what she did. Almost all of them have said they believe that if they just acted as men should, with honor, dignity, and respect towards women, that they'd never even have to worry about being accused of doing something. They never did. Until, well, they did. Let that sink in, gentlemen, and ask yourself, why are you turning a blind eye to that reality? And another thing that we need to reiterate, something I mentioned earlier, which is how women will never hold themselves or other women accountable for this type of behavior. It's how men, whenever they raise false allegation concerns, are immediately attacked, with the women immediately starting to quote statistics. We've all heard them. False allegations are rare. They're only a tiny percentage, which is usually commonly cited as being 2%. The fact they conveniently leave out, of course, is that that number comes not from actual current data or studies, but instead from a book written by one Susan Brownmiller in 1975. A book entitled Against Our Will, Men, Women, and Rape, in which the author relied not on empirical evidence or data, but instead attributed to comments, opinions about the New York City Rape Analysis Squad. The fact is, there is not a single study, not one, that has ever been published which sets forth an evidentiary basis to support the 2% of all allegations are false claim. And yet that claim is repeated and recited by women as gospel truth. Which is why we need to bring this to light, why we need to discuss cases like that of Ms. Rose.
No, I was looking. I saw this case on Instagram, and I was really going through a lot of my creators and stuff that I like watching to see if I can cover this with them. And the only person I saw was Dan, and I'm like, of course Dan's gonna cover this, my man.
Because it shows even more how misleading the statistics are. Because Ms. Rose wasn't convicted of a crime literally called making a false rape allegation. No. She was convicted of blackmail and perverting the course of justice.
Right.
Whatever the hell that is.
It wasn't false accusation. He's not wrong. So, like, even though she has accountability, the accountability is still put in other in other boats, in a sense.
Which begs
Not the false
obvious
accusation
question.
boat.
If researchers later go looking for convictions specifically categorized as false reporting or false allegations,
You're never gonna find
would
it.
this case get counted?
No,
Honestly, I don't know, but I highly doubt it.
I don't see it.
And it's important that we ask and answer that question before using statistics as if they tell the whole truth, because statistics are only as good as the way they're collected. To use a computer programming term, it's a case of garbage in and garbage out. If your methodology excludes certain categories of cases, which most of the times it does, then your conclusions only apply to what you've actually measured, not necessarily what's actually happened. And that's an important distinction, one that women, society as a whole, and the justice system are loath to make. And let's get back to the real victim here, the gentleman who was accused. Imagine for a second that the lies she told had worked. Imagine police believed her allegation. Imagine prosecutors chose to move forward. And imagine that they got a conviction. The man doesn't just lose his freedom, he becomes the rapist. That's how society will remember him, even if years later something changes, even if later on the true evidence comes out, even if later on his name gets cleared. Sorry, Google doesn't forget. Social media doesn't forget. The internet doesn't forget.
It's forever.
People don't forget. An accusation like that becomes part of your identity. It becomes your identity. And that's why this story matters, because it reminds men of a hard truth. You can never know with absolute certainty which women are safe and which ones aren't. As I cited earlier, think about how many men going through ugly divorces would have sworn, my wife would never make something up. She would never accuse me of something I never did. Then family court happens. Suddenly, there's allegation after allegation being made that they never saw coming. Claims of child abuse, claims of domestic violence, claim after claim designed to
Remember, it's the playbook for divorce.
gain leverage. Look, I'm not saying that every allegation is false, far from it. But I am saying that every man who has been blindsided by one thought he knew the person standing across from him. Those men were wrong, dead wrong. And sadly, they will pay the price of that for the rest of their lives. That's why men have to stop believing that being a good guy is enough, because it is not. Being a good man does not make you immune from a bad accusation. You need to protect yourself. You need to keep your messages and texts that you make with women. You need to consider wearing body cams or carrying recording devices where legal. You need to think before putting yourself in situations where there are no witnesses and no evidence beyond competing stories.
That means your penis, too.
Because she says versus he says, well, she
lose.
says wins nearly 100% of the time. Sorry, mates, but in this day and age, you no longer can just assume that because someone says they love you today, they'll still protect you tomorrow. That's not cynicism. It's reality.
It's the truth.
This case is another reminder that a single dishonest accusation has the power to destroy an innocent man's life.
It's just wonderful. At least she got some consequence out of this, but it wasn't even the consequence of false accusations like Dan said. So it doesn't even get filed into that false accusation stuff. All I can say is, men, what I always say is protect yourselves. There's dangers out there. There's so many ways to fuck up. Try not to. Please like, subscribe, comment down below. I really appreciate that. And catch you guys next time. Ciao.